get by. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Weisz.
Dr. Jeremy Weisz here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Sujan Patel. He is the founder of Mailshake, and also we're going to talk about Ramp Ventures as well. Sujan, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And since this is part of the SaaS series, you should check out the one I did with the founder of Zapier. That was an interesting one. And also Pipedrive. I remember, Sujan, they had 10,000 customers when I interviewed them. I think they have over 100,000 now. And we were talking about your website. It says 49,000 plus for Mailshake, but that needs to be updated to over 60,000. So, yeah. And a Weber Active Campaign and many more. Check those out at inspiredinsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run their podcast. We do strategy, accountability, and full execution. And Sujan, for me, we've known each other. I was looking back in our email threads since 2015, we've been communicating. And for me, the number one thing in my life is relationships. And I know the same as with you. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way to do that than the profile of the people and companies I most admire and have them on the podcast. So if you've thought about it, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com and learn more. And we have Sujan Patel. He's managing partner at Ramp Ventures. And they're the makers and owners of Mailshake, Right Inbox, and so many more sales and marketing SaaS companies. Sujan, thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited. I can't believe we've known each other for like 8 years now.
2015, it was contentmarketer.io. And you were doing, I think, dinners across the nation.
Yep. Yeah. That was an interesting time. So that's Mailshake originally started off as Content Marketer.io. So long story short, I started to build a solution to a problem I had, which is outreach as a marketer to, like other partners, podcast guests, all sorts of use cases. But when we built the product, the folks that loved it and then told their friends and just grew like wildfire was the sales customer, because the sales rep would jump in and oh, this is awesome. I don't even need to tell anybody how to do it. There's only one path forward. And so okay, well, content marketer is a really bad name for a sales tool, right? And we definitely don't do content. It's not for content marketers anymore. So we rebranded to Mailshake.
I love it. Even going back a little bit, you had a successful marketing agency and you were basically doing the marketing, driving traffic, and helping these companies acquire customers. TaskRabbit, Mint. Talk about the marketing agency and what you learned there that you bring to these SaaS companies.
Yeah, so I think the agency started with Single Grain, kind of did that 05 to 2013, end of 13.
Pretty good run.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I think, and knowing what I know now on how I operate companies, I did everything wrong, which a first time founder, great.
Like what?
But too many direct reports, not enough managers. I was doing too much myself, right? Under invested in the finance department. And so didn't have really a way to forecast stuff out. So we were selling stuff for certain prices. And then when we scaled, it made us less money. And so if I just had a part-time CFO that would just tell me hey, stupid, that's a bad idea, and here's why, I would have been wouldn't have done that, right? So we just were charging too little, and that it would work to get intro prices. Anyways, lots of stuff. But during my process there, we helped work. What we were really good at was marketing, not running the business of a marketing agency. So I knew how to build marketing teams, and they're very effective as well as cost effective. And so We work with all types of companies, e-commerce, SaaS, digital like publications, you name it. And what I realized, I got a front row seat to see all different types of business models and then how they pan out over the course of like 7, 8 years. And just like the trend that has happened in tech over the last, years, 2 decades, is that like software is kind of eating the world. Like, and so these companies I work with, like Mint, they were acquired and like ridiculous exit value, very quick growth, and the LTV just kept growing. And so I was like, all right, I need to be on the other end of the economics of this. And so I brought on a COO, eventually sold him the business. And pretty much the whole time I was running this company, I wanted to get the hell out of it. Okay. So like, that's the backstory. It's like day one, this company can generate revenue. I don't want to do this forever. Let's go find other stuff. And so I think my partner and I spun off maybe 3 or 4 different random companies. Like he created like a publishing, like he worked with publishers, like bloggers essentially, and created a product offering for them. And then they use that to create revenue. And so he eventually kind of divested from Single Grain and kind of went and did that. And we did a couple affiliate sites, like we did some exact match domain stuff, lead gen and stuff was my background. I knew how to drive traffic. I knew how to get leads, and I knew how to generate revenue from those leads. What I didn't know was software. Like I just like, what's a product? Like, how does that work? Right. And that was like, honestly, that was like, I was like 23 and that's how naive I was. So I was like, what's a product? Like, you mean like a physical product? So like software was a new concept. And so I sold the business, took a job, moved to Minnesota. I was in SF and moved to Minnesota. Crazy move. Really cold. I was really bored. And actually my wife and I were doing long distance at that time. And so due to the extreme boredom, from going from entrepreneur to an employee, I went to join one of my clients, early stage SaaS company that just raised a Series A. And I actually partaked in the A and then eventually like joined as an employee as a head of marketing. So effectively I was like the number 3 person there and running sales and marketing. And while I was running marketing, I was hired to run marketing. And then I eventually was like seeded into running sales and like really driving product as well. And that's, and my goal when I joined as an employee is like, I'm going to be here for 5 years to learn how to run a SaaS company. I know marketing, don't know sales. Well, I kind of know sales, but not sales for SaaS. Don't know customer support, don't know product. And effectively in 6 months, I kind of figured out enough to like, let me just take a stab at it. And that's kind of 2015. And that was where content marketer Mailshake was born.
Talk about how hard was it for them to recruit you, right? Going from entrepreneur to now you're employee, and also you're going from San Francisco to Minnesota. It doesn't seem like an easy sell.
No, and that was it definitely wasn't an easy sell. I think it was at the same time I had other like clients and other people, and I probably took the wrong opportunity. There was a small company in the Bay Area in SF that offered me like a director of marketing role. With there was no one above that director, so it's like the same thing, right? But they ended up 6 to 12 months later exiting to Microsoft. And I calculated the shares and the math. Like I missed a $4 million opportunity for under a year, right? So yeah, I was definitely kicking my butt to move.
What made you choose the opportunity that you had over that one at the time? I mean, looking back, it maybe seems obvious. Obviously, at the time, it's not. What made you choose the one that you chose?
The goal was it was based off of what my objective was, which was to learn how to run and start and run a software company. So the CEO of the company I joined was a product-driven CEO and very strong in product and UX and all those things that honestly, like I was super weak at. And so to me, it was like small enough company where I could be involved and like learn about the other parts of the market, of everything but marketing, to where I get as much face time with the founders. And I did. I was, effectively going to dinner with, and like it was when I joined, it was like maybe 20 people. And, took that, not my own doing. It was a product sales marketing kind of collaboration. We took that company from 1 million ARR to about 13 or so million when I left. And those dinners that we met or when we talked about, those are dinners I was actually doing with around the US, was to meet other VP of marketing so I can backfill my role. The hard part about leaving a company you invest in is you're putting your investment at risk if you leave, right? And so company was doing well, growing fast. And I was like, who the heck is crazy enough to come to Minnesota? The same problem, right? Who the heck is going to leave wherever they're at and move to Minnesota? And I didn't believe, we tried really hard. I didn't believe the talent was really great for a startup in Minnesota. So Minnesota actually has a whole lot of, the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul have a whole lot of marketing agencies, but they're enterprise or like larger, like they don't translate well to early stage startup, or they're working at Best Buy and Target. And I'm like, we cannot have that energy. They will not fit in. We'll get stuff done too slowly. And so these marketing dinners I did were a way to connect with other folks. I'd go to Boston. I just went to all the best cities with marketing folks. And I just said, hey, let's sit together. Little did people know I was secretly interviewing them to see who I would want to have coffee with the next day, to see who I would present this, offer to. But anyways, yeah, that was kind of the goal of the dinners. And honestly, it was also a way for me to connect with other marketers, see what everyone's doing. And like, the whole like never eat alone book, big fan of that. And, your network is your net worth. And that was all those folks I connected with. I'd say like 70-80% of them I still connect with. Like I'm still in communication frequently. And I've made a measurable impact on my life, whether it was like, like some work, a conversation we had, or, advice they gave me, or, something down the road that manifested, into a employee relationship or whatever.
So Sujan, you have the sales and marketing and business side. You obviously are not the technical person. So early on, how did you build what we see now as Mailshake?
Yeah. So early on, my strategy was, let's go find a technical co-founder. And so I found a technical co-founder. I found them on Product Hunt. And so still, okay, pro tip, if you're a CEO looking for a CTO or a technical founder, Product Hunt, makers of products on Product Hunt are great folks to be able to build stuff. Not very different than a CTO. So if you need a CTO, go hire a CTO. But if you want a founder type product person, that's a great place. But yeah, I found them on Product Hunt. By the way, we've since evolved now that we've done about 11 companies in this past 7 years. So Mailshake was the first one. And during that process, it was very painful for 2 years. I don't think it was ever not painful, but the first 2 years were very painful because we were pre-product market fit. And during that time, I was like, I'm never doing this again. Why don't I just stick to my strengths and buy software companies and then scale them, right? Like, let me just go buy something at $1 million. And so we ended up buying stuff. Another partner of mine, I ended up working with an ex-VC angel investor named Bob Senoff, who is now my partner in Route Ventures and in all the deals we do together. He's more of a finance guy, COO, and understands technology where he can manage developers or manage, like, I'd say like CTO, director of engineering type folks. And so I, to this day, don't have to worry about finance and HR and technical stuff, and AKA all the stuff I don't like to do, but is very necessary, and I probably suck at.
How did you meet Bob?
Bob and I met. He was an angel investor in during the single grain days. One of our ideas was to buy exact match domains and build websites on them and turn them into lead gen. So I came from a B2C background in travel, insurance, mortgage, stuff like that, where we'd be selling the lead. And so we went into those three industries. It was not a good ROI for Bob or any of those angel investors, but I was able to return probably 80% of the money. One algorithm update knocked the whole business out, which was the exact match update, effectively removing that as an advantage from their algorithm, which, duh, in hindsight, but yeah. So anyways, Bob and I met in 2010. He was happy that he returned 80% of his money. And he'd just been kind of an unofficial mentor. I've been telling him about Mailshake and all this stuff. And, we got to working on another company at the same time, Narrow, with another developer. So Mailshake and Narrow started at the same exact time. And both actually worked. Narrow, we ended up selling a few years later. And during this process, we're like, building is really hard. And so we're like, let's start buying stuff. Well, I didn't have any money to buy stuff. But Bob is well connected in the finance world. And so he did all the math and modelings and stuff like that based off my inputs. Cause I was like, Bob, I can grow companies. I can operate them. I can do sales, marketing. We know how to do the product side. I just need the other, I need a developer to build this stuff. I don't even know how to recruit. Now, reality is I could probably I could have learned more areas and gotten better. But, I really think fast forward 7 years that it's worked well to be doing things we're both, I'd say, excellent at, versus me trying to do it all to own bigger piece of the pie. But anyways, long story short, we raised some capital and bought a company called Walla Norbert. And then we kept doing that, rinsing and repeating. Meanwhile, same in parallel, Mailshake is struggling to get product market fit. And then it does. All right. So we buy 3 companies and then Mailshake gets product market fit and then takes off. All right. Meanwhile, now we have 4 freaking companies to run and this thing is growing fast. In hindsight, if I had just waited 6 months, magically known the future and waited 6 months, I would just probably should have stuck to doing just one company, Mailshake, because it took off. But that didn't happen the right timeline. And so I was like, well, we raised money from various folks and bought companies. I'm obligated. I'm not just going to stop and go chase another shiny object. So, and then these companies were growing too. So that's how I ended up getting into running multiple companies at the same time. And by the way, that is also that's my skill set. I'm really good at switching gears and I love it. What I love about running 4 companies is I get a dopamine hit from every 4 companies every day, all the time, right? One company gets this, the team goes and does it. we talk about strategy and then the team has to go execute. And while I'm waiting, which I'm very impatient, I can go play around with another company, right? And so I'm constantly getting these this worked, this didn't work, dopamine hits from this working. I'm like, oh, it's awesome. And then shared learnings, which is we do something crazy in one company and it works. And then guess what? It's now part of our playbook and we can kind of roll it out multiple times.
So at this point, right, Mailshake's taking off. You still have 3, other companies. What do you do from a staffing perspective there? How do you divide your time?
So my belief in these small SaaS companies, things under 10 million, you don't really need a CEO. Well, let me put it this way. It's not a lot of work to manage them if you have a good team. So for us, the goal, we're effectively built a private equity or micro private equity company, buying companies under $5 million in annual revenue. You need a team, right? I can't run the details of every single company, nor do I have a skill set. So day one was always about team building, right? We ideally need enough revenue to be able to hire teams. And so that's where the agency days come in. I was like, okay, I know how to build a marketing team cost effectively. So we put that in day one. My partner knows how to hire devs. So we hire a director of development of something. And then we, built out teams that way. And so these companies are built to sell. And there's a very big thing that's involved there, which is they're all if any day somebody's like, hey, I'm going to give you millions of bucks for this company, I could turn it and sell it in 30 days or less. And so we're not playing the shared resource game where there's cost efficiency of running multiple companies. Each team will go along with the team, with the company. And so effectively, I have a marketing person reporting to me, a sales person reporting to me, a customer support person reporting to me, a product person reporting to me at each company. Now, hopefully we're hiring good people and or we'll unfortunately they would get fired if they're not good and we replace them with someone good. But I have 14 meetings with 4 companies every week. So I don't have that many conversations to have, right? And then we were like, well, let's figure out the cadence and all this stuff. So we implemented EOS eventually, entrepreneurial organizational system or operating system.
I've had Gino Wickman on the podcast.
Nice. Yeah. And so, there's a lot of different frameworks out there. We look at scaling up, we look at, like OKRs, and this one just kind of fit. So each of our companies somewhere between 10 and 50 employees. Not at that time, but like that's kind of where we're at today. And it's a great system for me to keep a pulse on what's going on. The team to know very clearly what their goals or rocks are. And then for all of us to know whether we're doing it's working or not working. It's a very like 1 and 0. It's either working and we're hitting our numbers or it's not and we need to adjust, right? And so I've got these meetings 30 minutes per team, and are we doing the thing? Like they show me the scorecard. I'm like, yeah, it's working. Okay, we don't need to chit chat about bullshit. Let's just move on to the next thing, right? And they appreciate the transparency, and then vice versa. If there was a problem, I'm going to dig in. We're going to dig in and try to solve this problem. So, anyways, yes. Long story short, EOS was really helpful, and just hiring. I would always pay up for more experience. So really strong individual contributors who can operate independently, or always hiring every company having a manager of sorts.
I'm going to, before we hit record, we were talking about, how to buy a company, how to sell a company. And if we take a look here, if you're watching the video part, you can see we're at rampventures.com, and it says we buy SaaS companies, and some of the SaaS companies under the Ramp Ventures umbrella here. So what are you looking for in the purchase of a company?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I'm effectively looking for is something around $1 million to $2 million a year, where the founder is looking to exit, and keep their baby alive, right? Every company we buy, we do more with. Like we're adding more product, we're adding more functionality. Like we're gonna grow it. It's gonna be like 5-10 years from now, you can brag about the company and it'll make you look better if somebody goes to the website. But long story short, yeah, $1 million to $2 million a year, B2B SaaS. We don't do enterprise companies. So if you're selling to enterprise, probably not, we're not the right buyers. And that's just not our playbook. And our playbook is simple for everyone who wants to know. We will do good marketing, good sales, expand the product offering, either add features or expand the product itself into multiple products, and make sure we operate this company correctly.
So in this situation, Sujan, is the founder is not going to stay with the company. So if there is a situation where they're like, I want to stay on and still work, that would also not be a fit.
No, yeah. So we would be buying 90 to 100% of the business. And so we can keep the founders on for like 5-10%. We've done that on occasion, but the real thing is to buy the whole thing and operate it. And we want the founder out from a operational perspective, because Well, if they could have grown it, they would have, right? But that not to say that they can't, but that's not a dynamic we're really good at. That like I'm not like I said, we're kind of micro private equity where we're going to operate it, and we want to run it our way, because I know it works, and then I also know when it doesn't how to fix it to make it work. Right? If I add another like variable there, I think it's going to break things, or it's too risky.
Yeah, I mean, you've proven a certain model that works for you, and that's what you're going with. Do you is there any cross-selling going on when you acquire a company? Do you have a strategy because it's B2B, not enterprise? Do any of these tie together where you can then go, oh, we have all these, 70,000 Mailshake users, this may be good for them. Do you do a cross-selling campaign? How does that work?
So the answer is yes, sometimes, but it's not intentional. So that is not the main factor when buying your companies, unless one of our companies is buying another company. So Mailshake has done 2 acquisitions. Norbert's done 1. Reddit Bucks has not done any. But Norbert and Mailshake have Mailshake is a customer of Norbert. We use their API. We offer like email verification. So it wasn't the intention to be in the email space. It was we found good companies and we got it. Hey, we know the risk factor was lower because hey, we know email, right? We know this. So it's not our preference to be in email. So we're in 2 categories. Email, I'd say, in sales related to email, and then HR tech. So Zoom Shift, I think might be on the website. Is another one that we're operating right now that's in the HR tech. So it's scheduling software. I much prefer the HR tech space. And the reason is HR tech is usually a need to have, not a nice to have. Like our customers at Zoom Shift could not operate without the software. Hence our churn is very low to no churn. Yeah.
What are the factors that you look at from a valuation perspective?
So I'm looking at growth. I'm expecting little growth. I'm okay with no growth. As long as it's flat, we will look at it. If it's declining, usually it's going to be a pass. I'm also looking at how big the team is, where you're spending money, like the P&L. Looking back kind of like 2 years, looking at traffic. So in the perfect world, we'll buy a company with a small team doing $1 million a year. And the team would come with the company. It again, maybe like 3 to 5 people max. And then they have some growth going on. And then, not a lot of marketing or sales. Or maybe they've tried it and it hasn't really worked. Or they're trying it and it's working, right? Like that's cool too.
You have a lot of moving pieces here, a lot of companies in general. Is there a certain number per year that you have a goal of, we'd like to at least look at X number per year and make X number of acquisitions a year?
So the hard work is when we buy the company for like 6 months. It's like absorbing it, building the team. Like I'm like in the weeds and everything, making sure everything is good. So I have bandwidth to buy 2 companies a year, right? 6 months. I'm looking at deals every single day. I don't know what the number is, somewhere in the hundreds of deals a month. How many serious deals? So that's deals I would casually look at a PDF, the description of it, 5 to 10 realistic views of detailed versions of what kind of in negotiations, always with 1 or 2. And negotiate. And by the way, failed venture or failed seed companies are great fits for us too. Some of those some of our best companies have been failed venture companies. So let's put it this way. I'm not trying to get to $1 billion valuation. My goal is to 5 to 10x the company over the course of 5 years or longer. I want to build forever companies that are run like they're sellable. And a very important reason why those two things are factors. Forever companies really defines like, is this a need or a want, right? And so it leans towards the need. It's just by various nature of the sentence. And then sellable, meaning it's profitable. The team is running the company. I'm a lot more hands off. We've hired the right people. The metrics are good. Like NRR is good. Growth rate is good. They're profitable, right? So like a clean bill of health, like meaning like the books are good in standing order. The code is well documented. Again, like those are things that are kind of tiny when you're operating and you probably don't even think about it. So like if you're a CEO of a company and you're running any company, it's not like if you didn't have it, it would be a bad thing. But I guarantee you when a company comes to buy you and you don't have it, you're going to be in a whole lot of pain. Or you can make mistakes like I did when I didn't have a CFO telling me I was charging too little and that at certain amount of employees to scale of number of clients, I would be like not making money. That's where it hurts you. So it hurts you down the road. So anyways, yeah, that's why I say I want it to be sellable. But I want to run it forever.
Sujan, we won't go as far as mistakes, but maybe learnings that you took from one acquisition to another. You're like, well, I would do this differently next time. What are some of those learnings that you took in the past acquisitions that you've had?
Yeah. So here's some rapid fire ones. Don't buy companies with a high concentration of revenue from one or small group of customers. We did that. Huge mistake. We lost that customer effectively. It was one, and that was like 70% revenue lost overnight. Anyways, or if you do it, like structure your earnout or like the deal around that risk. Number two is I would not buy a declining industry. So I won't mention the names of these companies or whatever that hit these things, but we bought a business in a declining space. Well, like slightly declining or is too old, like it was last gen stuff. And so effectively, like it was just like, even if we grew the thing, the traffic was in a downward trend. It's like growth hacking today is such a like minuscule thing. When I launched an ebook on it in 2014, it was the hottest thing ever, right? But now you can't get enough of ChatGPT or ChatGPT, right? And so like I try not to buy trendy businesses fads as well. So we're both go. And then what's the other thing? The last thing I'd say is like, don't keep the founder around. And that's just what works for me. If you're going to operate it, it's two type A personalities that don't know each other trying to run the company, right? And there's no amount of like getting to know you that would do it. I usually find that one person has to go. And if I bought the company, I'm not going anywhere. I want my investment to do something, right? And that again, that's my playbook because we are operating it. If you're a typical PE model you might not be operating it. You might be operating at the board level, trying to drive the strategy, and that could work fine. But I'm trying to pump a whole lot of life into it. And yeah.
That's hugely valuable, Sujan. I love that. Yeah. Talk about on the flip side, right? How to sell a company.
All right. So there's the whole like making sure your company is sellable, right? Clean book, like clean finances, all that stuff. I've talked about it a bunch of times, right? But like that's important. I think there's a good book by Bo something called Finish Big. Read that book. So prerequisite one is read that book. What it will effectively teach you is what you want out of your company. whatever you want, list it out today. Like if you want to sell in 10 years, list it out today. Keep adding to that list. And it's whatever it is on that list, it's okay. Whatever it is on that list, be transparent with the buyer saying, I want these things. So here's a good example of an intangible thing. So a lot of things money can't buy. Money can't buy keeping your employees around because you really think you build a solid team, right? I want to keep my legacy. This is a company I built, hard work, sweat, tears, whatever. I want this to be around. I don't want to be killed in an acquisition or whatever, right? Oftentimes it happens. It happens more often than not. Whatever it is, like I'm buying failed venture deals. I'm buying failed angel, or you might have debt. You might be selling where like you're not going to get much out of it. Well, what do you personally want out of it? So like sometimes I buy a company and the VC is like written it off. They're like, I'll take $50 for this thing, right? Or maybe I'll take $1,000 or $100,000. But the founders worked their ass off on this thing and seen not much from it. I will give the founder another $100,000 as a consulting fee to make sure they get something out of this deal, right? And so list out what you want from there. Highly avoid doing earnouts, but those are possible. And then really it's, if you're in software, it's the rule of 40, right? So the rule of 40 is simple. Your company either like the various edges of this your company has to be growing by 40%, or you have to have 40% margins. And any way to tackle that. So you could be growing 20%, have 20% margins. That's good. You can be growing 100% and be losing 60% a year. That's cool too. Rule of 40, anytime you deviate from that, doesn't work. Again, that's only specific to software. But I'd say if you're selling your company, you want to have an indisputable 12 months of performance. Because the first thing the buyer's thinking is, how risky is this revenue? How risky is this deal? If I'm going to buy it, is this going to go away? You also want to be able to make sure you are zero value to the company. Okay. Well, as close to zero as possible. And that's why I'm trying to get the heck out of these companies and out of the way once we get them going. Point of this is like, if you bought my agency Single Grain, and I left, you would be buying at that thing, it was like 3 million in revenue and very little leads. I was the freaking lead source, right? I am not the lead source, or like my team can run this company without me, right? That's the point. So if you're not in that position before you sell, get in that position for at least 12 months. Same thing goes with like this always happens, a not clean P&L. So you're writing off your cars, which like all good, do that stuff, right? But like, you don't have a good P&L, like maybe you're spending too much here, or you're like, you hadn't fired that guy you needed to fire, or you haven't hired that like COO you've been meaning to do. Those are all the moves you need to do 12 months before. So like for 12 months, your company needs to be performing well without you. And it needs to be like auditable, meaning like, why is this here? What's this there? Can you cut costs here? Now, and the last piece of advice I'll say is leave some upside for the buyer. Known like upside. Make it like when they look at the P&L, they're like, oh, I can cut some fat, right? Why? Because that's gold. That's like free. It's free money for the buyer. And it's like, it makes your deal. Like, so buyers, like I said, I look at hundreds of deals a month. I don't even know how many, and I'm in constant negotiation with somebody or another, right? Well, buyers have options, right? And so you want yours to be the higher value, higher option. The easiest thing to do is low hanging fruit. People will usually go towards that. That's my 2 cents on that matter.
Love it. Thanks, Sujan. Yeah. And we'll get you mentioned this, with the agency part, like you generated leads. So we'll talk about marketing lead versus sales led team. But before we do, talk about within the revenue, what is the ranges of multiples that you're seeing for purchasing or selling a SaaS company?
So I'll tell you, it's not what you see on TechCrunch. Like exact opposite. Okay. So if you're under 10 million, so let me back up. So this is all the multiples are all derived from the buyer and the number of buyers in the space for your. So how much money people have, right? So PE and how much it takes to run a company. So PE usually starts at 10 million. Sometimes it can go down to 5, but 10 million because they need $10 million in revenue to hire their executives and their team to go run it, right? They cannot, that model doesn't work well without that money, right? 1 to 10 million, I'd say is the least, 5 to 10 million actually is the least. And then there's financial and strategic. So I guess over 10 million, a financial buyer would be somewhere between, I'd say 2x on the low end to 5x, 6x on the high end. That's all about your growth and profit margins, right? Like that rule of 40, the higher if you're above 40, 4 or 5x, not that big of a deal. Now 5 to 10 million is kind of the no man's land. You could probably get the same multiples as I mentioned above 10, but the problem is there's not a lot of buyers in that space, right? It's too small for PE, too small for strategic, right? If you're going to be a strategic buyer, and you only buy $5 million, $6 million in revenue, that's like not enough to be meaningful for the work involved to absorb that company. Also, regular people just don't have $15 to $50 million laying around, right? Like that's just who has that much money, right? It's not individuals, and the corporations don't really want to touch it, right? So that's kind of why it's no man's land. Now, 1 to 5, typically it's micro PE buyers like myself, right? If you just Google micro PE, micro private equity, you'll find a list of buyers. It's a new emerging space. People have figured out ways to make cost-effective ways to make that work effectively, essentially. But it's micro PE firms. There's probably 20 of them out there. We all know each other. So this is also a small group of buyers because I'd say in this space, 1 to 5 million, you're looking at probably 1x to 4x. And so get your multiples down, right? Like I usually start the conversation with the founder and they say, I want 10x. I'm like, okay, what I'm going to say for the next 10 minutes is going to hurt your feelings and you're going to hate me, but I'm going to say it anyways. And don't worry, let's just stay friends. You don't have to sell me your company. And I pretty much tell them all the reasons why that is batshit crazy and that no one will pay. And I actually tell them to go talk to other people. And what always happens, 6 months later, I come back. They did all the homework. Like, you're right, Sujan. I probably cursed your name like 100 times because you crushed my dreams, but let's go with 4x, right? Or like they will sell it for a lower multiple. And that's just because like at 1 to 5, there is not 10x of value. Now, I'm saying that outside of strategic. Strategic deals happen all the time, but you cannot plan for strategic deals. You cannot run your company for strategic valuation unless you're like, I'm going to sell it to SAP and I know SAP needs this and I got the right timing and luck, right? Like I met the guy or whatever. And that can happen, but like very low. So I'd say 1 to 4x is a 1 to 5 million. Under 5 million, I think like probably you either don't have a sellable company or it's like 2 to 3x. And the buyer pool opens up quite a bit because people do have a few $1 million to buy around, to invest or buy, right? But like that, like 1 to 10 million is the hardest range to sell because think about this: at 3x and a $1 million company, you need a buyer with at least $3 million, all the way to 9 million and 3x. You need a buyer with $27 million. Who has that, right? All the PE people have it. Well, you're too small for them, right? And so it's just the numbers game. And what I've learned the hard way from operating these companies is like it's the same work to run a $1 million company or a $10 million company or $50 million company. So it doesn't change. Your just ROI changes. AKA go bigger, right?
I know we have a little bit of time left, so I want to talk about changing the go-to-market strategy, marketing led versus sales led. And also, Sujan, I want to give a big shout out to William Harris, who reintroduced us, who's the CEO of Element, and they are an e-commerce growth agency focused on profit, not just ROAS. And you can check them out at Element, ELUMYNT.com. How do you know William, by the way?
So William was the previous head of marketing at the company I joined in Minnesota. And so he worked for me for about like a year or two. And we've just kept in touch
He's a
since
smart
then, become
dude.
good friends. Yeah, super sharp. Highly recommend his agency. If you're e-commerce and you want to invest in paid, I'd say he's one of the best, not just agencies, but one of the best paid folks out there. And I love agencies that are like their founders, aka the marketer person is hands-on, and Will and Jeff are that.
Nice. So changing the go-to-market strategy.
Yeah. So at Mailshake, we did this fun thing. And by fun, I mean extremely painful, but super rewarding. Last year, which was like decide to go up market. And the reasoning behind that was we needed to be sellable. Our customers had too high churn, simply put. We tried a lot of things, but we didn't try hard enough. And that was all because of the pricing model as well as the type of customers we were getting. We were all the way to 2022, all of our traffic, all of our new customers came in from the website. They either talked to a salesperson or signed up by themselves. It was somewhere between $60 and $100 per user to buy, and you just go, it's a credit card fee, whatever. Well, that resulted into like people just trying things, and we had a lot of activation churn, and so because you only put in $60 and you maybe tried it for 2 months, you wouldn't really like try that hard. No, it's like, anyways, long story short, we had to go up market. That was the way. That was where the money's at. That's where stickier users are at, and that's kind of where we can get better valuations as an exit. Now, again, like we always like look at our company and say, is this sellable? And it's typically a quarterly question. But anyways, long story short, we wanted to go up market. Marketing is not going to drive that motion because marketing can't control who comes through the door. They can only control like the keywords or whatever. And we tried marketing in 2020 to 2022, it resulted into more of the same customer. So it worked, but we just got the same customer. And so we're like, we need to go after our higher end competitors are Outreach and SalesLoft, and they're enterprise, and they keep moving more and more into enterprise. So there's this gap that's been opened up, which is their kind of smaller customers, the mid-market. Like, well, we're not even doing anything for this. And so the go-to-market to get those customers, to get in front of those customers was not something marketing can do because we couldn't figure out we couldn't market to where they were. They were not actually, and they're not like searching for something on Google. We need to get them before they're searching something on Google. And so we started a outbound sales function. We tried for years to do outbound sales, but it was never a big lever because we were monthly prices. So we went from monthly to yearly pricing. We jacked up our prices because we want serious people to buy because the other customers end up churning at too higher a rate that it's worth it for us. So we went and increased our pricing, hired and scaled up our outbound team. And because of that, we ended up, we want these customers, we have this right fit of customers, and this is what the requirements are. We were able to laser focus and get them. Fast forward a year, it's outbound we are getting more of those customers, and because of the outbound efforts, inbound teams getting them, and then we found out where great places to source the leads, meaning where the sales reps, the customers we want to get, hang out. So our customers are sales teams, it's either the sales manager, sales director, or an SDR that's like the person who's going to be the buyer of the software. And so we find out where to target them. And so now we're also re-adding marketing and focusing on branding and awareness. So we were focusing originally on like, where can we get like ROAS, or like, where can we get a good CAC? Oh, we can do Facebook ads. We could do this ad. We could do this. We can invest in a partnership program. But we just kept getting more of the same customer because we were looking at it from a financial perspective, not a who perspective, who the buyer is. And so last year we had to fire our whole marketing team, like stop a functioning marketing effort, right? And build out a outbound sales team to focus on this specific customer, redo our product roadmap to focus on things that this new customer wants. And so one day we literally had to flip a light switch and say, stop all this stuff, kill the roadmap, scrap that, let's go do these things instead. So our product team had to go relearn who the customer is and like stop everything. And then, you know, it was very painful to fire folks when they were doing their job and they were doing it well. And then build out at the same time, not kill morale and build up the outbound sales team. You know, now that like almost a year has passed, it was definitely the right move. And I, you know, like every person who does this, I wish I did it sooner.
Sujan, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone check out rampventures.com and the companies there. And of course, mailshake.com. And Sujan, thanks as always. Great having you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited. That was a fun conversation.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like $100 grand.